All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to another Monday stream. Oh my goodness. Apparently, okay, come on. I'm trying to get my chat loaded on my end. Come on. Come on. Okay. There we go. There we are. Sorry about that. Apparently we had some outages earlier today, and say what you will about Spectrum, but at least they have the courtesy to send you a text message letting you know, hey, by the way, there's some outages that are happening, and it's going to screw up your internet connection for a little bit. And it's like, all right, at least you're letting me know what's happening. I like to be in the loop about these things. So, you probably saw the title, and I have to say, I'm giving you an offer that you can't refuse, because today we are talking about the Todd-father. Yes, Todd McFarlane, one of the superstars of the 90s. Sorry, Mike. By the way, this episode is it's been requested by multiple people, but it was mostly requested by Mike's Total Dragon channel, and he was trying to tell me to do the accent, and I'm not exactly sure which accent he wants me to do. Does he want me to do the Godfather accent, or does he want me to do the Todd McFarlane Canadian accent? I don't know, but I'm terrible with accents. I can't even get a Scottish accent right. How can I get any other accent right? But anyways, yes, today we are talking about Todd McFarlane. For some reason, I wanted to spell his name McFarland. I don't know why. And I'm a little bit disappointed that he hasn't come up with like some sort of RPG video game at this point called McFarland with all of his different characters. But anyways, so, as we start most of these things, we're going to Wikipedia and getting a quick little rundown of McFarlane's life before we get into his interviews and his contributions. Alright, so Todd McFarlane, born March 16th, 1961, and he is still alive and kicking. A Canadian comic book creator, best known for his work as the artist on The Amazing Spider-Man and as the creator, writer, and artist on the superhero horror fantasy series Spawn, as well as being the current president and co-founder of Image Comics. That's right, he was one of the founders of Image, because if they all got sick of Marvel, which, fair. Sorry. Can feel a little congested right there. Alright. In the late 1980s and early 90s, McFarlane became a comic book superstar due to his high-selling work on Marvel Comics' Spider-Man franchise, on which he was the artist to draw the first full appearances of the character Venom. So yeah, you guys know this image by now, but let's pull it up. Here's some of his artwork. Oh, the famous picture of Spider-Man that he's known for. But, nope. All right, where is it? Where is Venom? Venom, where are you? Where are you? I'm over here. Yeah, I saw that one of the cover before, but where is like a full one? Might as well just do this. But yeah, this is the Venom cover that you guys know Todd McFarlane for, along with that Spider-Man cover that we saw. So yeah, this is what he got him into it, but he is mostly known for Spawn. So, yeah, this guy. This isn't McFarlane. I don't think this is McFarlane. Is it? Nope, this is McFarlane here. Alright. The shading looks a little different from what I'm used to seeing with Spawn, so I didn't really know. But yeah, he's known for Spawn, the horror superhero, I guess you want to say. And Spawn is his precious baby, but there has been some legal complications with him, and we're going to get into that soon. I mean, come on. I'm not the biggest Spawn fan, but I will admit this is cool as hell. Like, this, the chains, the robe, the throne of, I think that's zombie skeletal parts. But yeah, Todd McFarlane's motto is the rule of cool. Just go with the coolest thing possible and run with it. That is his motto. Alright. In 1992, he helped form Image Comics, pulling the occult anti-hero character Spawn from his high school portfolio. Oh, he came up with him in high school. Cool. And updating him for the 90s. The debut issue sold 1.7 million copies, which, as of 2007, remains a record for an independent comic book. Yeah. I'm so used to seeing the abysmal number of comic books that are being reported, or the comic book sales that are reported, that looking at that number is crazy that comic books used to be that popular. The character's popularity in the 90s also encouraged a trend in creator-owned comic book properties, which it should. Alright. After leaving inking duties on Spawn with issue number 70, February 1998, McFarlane has illustrated comic books less often, focusing on entrepreneurial efforts, such as McFarlane Toys and McFarlane Entertainment, a film and animation studio. In September 2006, it was announced that McFarlane would be the art director of the newly formed 38 Studios, founded by Major League Baseball pitcher Curt Schilling. Oh, okay. What is 38 Studios? Oh, video games. Okay. I'm not a gamer, so I would not know that. Company founded Massachusetts. Okay. Stop it. Alright, McFarlane used to be a co-owner of the National Hockey League's Edmonton Oilers before selling his share to Daryl Katz. He is also a high-profile collector of record-breaking baseballs. So he's a big baseball guy. Alright. As a film director, he produced the 1997 film adaptation of Spawn, starring Michael J. White. Oh, that's who I was. Yeah, I remember that. I hate to say I haven't seen the movie, but I have seen Nostalgia Critic ripping it to shreds. So, yeah. I am starting to realize as I get older that a lot of Nostalgia Critic's criticisms is stretched out for comedic effect. Don't get me wrong, some of the movies he's shown are stinkers, but some of them, it's like, these are just nitpicks. I saw the Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it with my boyfriend, and yeah, it's cheesy and campy, but it's nowhere near as bad as the Nostalgia Critic made it out to be. Like, he made it out to be as, oh, it's just a big dumb, like, barbarian flick with big dumb Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's like, it's not that horrid. Like, why are you being so venomous towards it? I don't know. It's also been a long time since I saw that review. Anyways, he will be making his directorial debut in 2025's reboot film King Spawn, which will star Jamie Foxx. I have seen stuff about that, and it is going to be very interesting to see Spawn have a bit of a resurgence in the public view, because yeah, Spawn had his 1997 film. There's also the Spawn animated series, which is a cult classic for many animation fans. Oh, shut up and go away. But it is going to be very interesting to see what happens when Spawn hits the mainstream, because I get the very sneaking suspicion that the normies are going to be shocked with Spawn. I mean, Spawn, from what I've seen of Spawn, he's not the most controversial comic book character. Yes, it's dark. Yes, it's edgy, but there has been edgier shit in comic books before. Like, hell, let's see them try and make a comic book adaptation of the Crossed series, or a movie adaptation of the Crossed series. That will not, that's not going to happen unless it's rated X. But, I don't know, what do you guys think? How do you, Chris' last name? I'm sure he's not far off. The movie isn't terrible, but extremely 90s. The main villain is a pedo clown. Oh yeah. Is the clown a pedo? I'm not too into Spawn, so I have no idea. But yeah, from the clips I have seen, it is very, very 90s. And the 90s, sometimes they got comic books right, and sometimes they didn't. Like, oh my god, they dropped the ball on Batman so badly. But it's like, I heard Blade was really good. I still need to see Blade. Alright. Oh, that's what Spawn looked like. He looks a lot more like a superhero here than in his final design. I think I like the final design a lot better, because the final design, he actually looks like a demon Spawn here. Whereas with this version, he just looks like a generic superhero. He kind of looks like the, Hooded Justice from Watchmen a little bit. Except for like the red highlights. Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead. The only reason I'm skipping ahead to career is because McFarlane does have a lot of interviews. He's one of those creators who, yes, he is very chatty, and yes, he will answer all of your questions. But the problem is, he almost talks a little bit too much, and I had to pick and choose with all the different interviews to make sure I get clips where I can get everything into 2 hours if I can. Alright, so other work, DC and Marvel. Oh yeah, this is like one of the most iconic Batman covers I've ever seen. Like, it's more American Gothic or American comic Gothic Batman rather than Batman, but I still love it. Like, look at that. That's pretty cool. Alright. While still in college, McFarlane began sending 30 to 40 packets of submissions every month to comic editors. Oh my goodness. Busy boy. Don't disrespect the Clooney bat card or bat nipples. I do recommend you watch Blade. I have heard a lot of good things about Blade. Like, Blade was one of the shining examples of comic book films in the 90s, and I am so disappointed to hear the news that they canceled the Blade reboot. But at the same time, do we want a Blade reboot? Especially because it's most likely going to be Disney at the helm? I don't know, like, when it came to the Deadpool movies, Ryan Reynolds had to fight tooth and nail to keep Deadpool. So if we want Blade to be Blade, should Disney really be at the helm there? I mean, if we want a good Blade movie and we want him to be like the horror anti-hero, Disney should not do it, because they are clearly still uncomfortable with making stuff that's outside of their image. Alright, back to the page. Alright. But that is insane. Like, he was not wasting any time. Like, look at my shit! Come on, give me a job! Alright, totaling over 700 submissions after a year and a half, most of which were in the form of pinups. Half resulted in no response, while the other half resulted in rejection letters, though he received some constructive criticism from a few editors. One of them, DC's Sal Amendola, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, gave McFarlane a dummy script to gauge McFarlane's page-to-page storytelling abilities. Oh, that's actually very nice. Amendola's advice that McFarlane's submissions needed to focus on page-to-page stories rather than pinups led to McFarlane to create a 5-page Coyote example that he initially sent to Uncanny X-Men editor Ann Nocenti. That is actually probably better because that is a very good advice, because if you're going to get into comic books and you want to do the interior comic book art, it would probably be a lot better for editors to know, okay, can you do the visual storytelling? Can you provide a good comic? It's one thing to make pinups, and it's another thing to do the storytelling with the visuals. So that's actually very good that he gave him that advice. But hold on. A couple of years ago, there was this hashtag going around called Comics Broke Me or something like that, and Todd McFarlane posted a picture of all his rejection letters. Todd McFarlane rejection letters. Yeah, he posted a picture of all the rejection letters that he had over the years. Yeah, like, he got rejected a crap ton. Yeah, I see a couple of Spider-Mans there, First Comics, we got some DC, PC, First Comics again. Like, yeah, he got rejected a lot. And it's not fun to get rejected, but at the same time, he did receive the criticism he needed in order to become the artist that companies would want. I mean, it sounds awful putting it that way, but you can be an artist, but then there's, am I the artist that comic book companies would want to be the artist on their books? So it's a very, very delicate line to walk. Alright, who passed it along to Archie Goodwin and Joe Duffy, the editors of the Marvel imprint at Comics, which published Coyote. These in turn passed it onto Coyote creator Steve Englehart, who contacted McFarlane in 1984 with an offer for Todd's first comic book job, a backup story in Coyote number 11. There we go. You push through, you take the advice, and it'll open up opportunities for you. So, say what you will about Todd McFarlane, but he is willing to change and evolve in order to get what he wants. Alright, McFarlane soon began drawing for both DC and Marvel, with his first major body of work being a 2-year run, 1985-1987, on DC's Infinity Inc. In 1987, McFarlane illustrated the last 3 issues of Detective Comics' 4-issue Batman Year 2 storyline. From there, he moved to Marvel's Incredible Hulk, which he drew from 1987 to 1988, working with writer Peter David. Okay, I'm gonna travel right back up here to his early life. Born in Canada, worked in dad worked in a printing business, which led him to take work where he could find it. During McFarlane. Okay, so his dad was a hustler too, so I guess we know where he got that from. And family lived in 30 different places, from Alberta to California. Oh, my. Alright, so he began drawing as a hobby at an early age and developed an interest in comics, acquiring as many as he could and learning to draw from them. He was a fan of comic creators such as John Byrne, Jack Kirby, Frank Miller, and George Perez, as well as the writing of Alan Moore. And not so much Kirby or Byrne, but I can definitely see Frank Miller and Perez in his style. And yeah, a lot of his writing is very Alan Moore. Alan Moore in the fun bits, he doesn't get super up his ass from what I understand, but yeah. Okay, to respond. Alright. 12th grade, McFarlane, working as a groundskeeper for the Calgary Cardinals, was standing in the bleachers when a 13-year-old ninth grader sitting near him named Wanda Kolmajek, who served as this team's Batgirl, began flirting with him. The two began dating over the objections of Wanda's father, who thought she was too young for him, though in time McFarlane won him over. Oh wait, is she his wife? Yeah. Oh damn. Aw, they were high school sweethearts. That's so cute. Okay, alright, now we're getting into The Amazing Spider-Man. 1988, McFarlane joined writer Dave McKinley on Marvel's The Amazing Spider-Man, beginning with issue 298, drawing the preliminary sketch for that cover's image on the back of one of his Incredible Hulk pages. So, okay, never mind. McFarlane garnered notice for the more dynamic poses in which he depicted Spider-Man's aerial web swinging, his enlarging of the eyes on the characters' masks, and the greater detail in which he rendered his artwork, in particular, the elaborate detail he gave to Spider-Man's webbing. Alright, let's look at the pics. I know you guys are loving that Spider-Man webbing, so let's get some Spider-Man webbing action. Oh yeah, like look at the different strands there, and yeah, the eyes here. Dynamic poses. I was watching an interview earlier of McFarlane where he was asked the question, why are so many people how so many artists are afraid of drawing feet? Which is an interesting question for him to answer. And he's like, okay, look, if you're an artist and you're not so confident about drawing feet, you gotta use perspective to like hide your flaws in a way where it's not so obvious that you can't draw a thing. Though we can see he is very good at drawing hands. So he is decent enough at drawing hands. Feet, I guess he's okay, and you can get away with the fact that his feet are in the suit right now, so you don't have to think too much about it. Alright, so whereas it had previously been rendered as essentially a series of X's between the McFarlane was possibly influenced by artist Arthur Adams, whose visual concept of Spider-Man with a large-eyed mask, webbing with more detailed strands and more contorted poses, while web swinging can be seen in the Web of Spider-Man Annual number 2. Alright. McFarlane drew the first full appearance of Eddie Brock, the original incarnation of the villain Venom. He has been credited as the creator's co-creator, though this has been a topic of dispute within the comic book industry. That's not the only dispute he's going to be in. We're going to get into that a little bit later. Alright. During his run on The Amazing Spider-Man, McFarlane became increasingly dissatisfied with the lack of control over his work, as he wanted more say in the direction of the storylines. He began to miss deadlines, requiring guest artists to fill in for him on some issues. Oh dear. In 1990, after a 28-issue run of Amazing Spider-Man, McFarlane told editor Jim Skelligrup that he wanted to write his own stories and would be leaving the book with issue number 328, which was part of that year's company-wide Acts of Vengeance crossover storyline. In July 2012, the original artwork to that issue's cover, which features Spider-Man dispatching the Hulk, sold for a record-breaking $657,250. Oh. The highest auction price ever for any piece of American comic book art. Does that hold to this day? I feel like that does not hold to this day. Because I feel like that that has been overtaken. Not because of some sort of like maybe some other new comic book art has come out that's broken that record already. I don't know. I have to say, I don't keep track of the records of certain comic book stuff, only because I'm a little bit too busy either reading comic books or writing my own stuff. These episodes are a learning experience for myself, as well as for anyone who wants to watch these streams, because I will admit, while I was aware of the creators and some of the drama that was happening behind the scenes, I never got the full picture of what was going on. And so these episodes are very educational for me as well, because there's a lot of this stuff that I did not know, like finding out that Schuster was making erotic art way back in the 50s was a bit of a mind blow to me. Alright, new Spider-Man title. Wanted to appease McFarlane, Marvel gave McFarlane a new adjectiveless Spider-Man title for him to both write and draw. Spider-Man #1 sold 2.5 million copies. Very impressive. Largely due to the variant covers, with which Marvel, seeking to capitalize on McFarlane's popularity, published the issue to encourage collectors into buying more than one edition. Oh, yeah. This was right before that bubble burst. McFarlane, unbeknownst to his parents at the time, was making about $1 million a year. Why would he hide that? McFarlane wrote and illustrated 15 of the series' first 16 issues, many issues of which featured other popular Marvel characters such as Wolverine and Ghost Rider in guest roles. Oh shit, he illustrated Ghost Rider too? Hold on, I want to see McFarlane do Ghost Rider, because that is probably going to look sick as fuck. Oh yeah, I have seen that picture before. So we got a couple different versions to go on. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's sick as hell. That is sick as hell. I am also learning a ton. Pretty great videos whenever I catch you live. Oh, thank you, Chris. Alright, despite his acclaim as an artist, according to Dave Wallace of Comics Bulletin, many found McFarlane's writing to be clumsy, unsophisticated, and pretentious. I have heard that from other 90s kids, too. Your boy Zach, before he went a little crazy, he has mentioned that he went back to reread Spawn, and he's like, oh, some of these are not that particularly great. And I've heard it from so many others, including a former friend of mine who's like, yeah, it's not the best, but the art's pretty good. And questioning the wisdom of allowing him to write a new Spider-Man title in the first place. At the same time, the editorial had problems with the dark tone of the stories McFarlane was telling, beginning with the inaugural Torment storyline, which depicted a more vicious vision of the reptilian villain Lizard under the control of the voodoo priestess Calypso. Subsequent storylines, such as Masks, featuring Spider-Man confronting the demonic Hobgoblin, while Perceptions, which involved Spider-Man dealing with police corruption, child rape, and murder, a hint of the work he would later do on Spawn, led some stores to refuse to stock the book. Oh, interesting. They refused to stock that book, but apparently Watchmen's okay. I mean, Watchmen is groundbreaking, but it's like, Rorschach literally murders a child rapist and murderer in one of those issues. So it's a little hypocritical for them to draw the line now, when it's like, you guys were so set on Watchmen. Alright. But I guess maybe it's because it's Spider-Man, because while Spider-Man does have dark moments, like Stan Lee, back in the day when he decided to just ignore the CCA for 2 issues to talk about actual drug problems, it was a dark storyline. Like, you're talking about drug addiction and drugs going in through the city, which was a big no-no back in the day. So it's not like Spider-Man hasn't dealt with dark topics before, but maybe it's because with these specific topics, it's a little bit of a no-no with Spider-Man, although nowadays it's kind of par for the course. Okay, so this created further tension between McFarlane and the editorial, which viewed Spider-Man as a historically lighthearted character marketed to young readers, which, yeah, he was. Alright, make a number of compromises for work, including enforcing McFarlane's minor costume changes across the entire line of other Spidey comics. Strained from Charles' relationship. Okay. According to McFarlane, editor Tom DeFalco in the 2000 documentary The Devil You Know Inside the Mind of Todd McFarlane, among the examples of the issues that prompted his departure were editorial censorship of a panel in that issue. Hold on. Panel issue. Led to creative clashes. Okay, so a crossover storyline with X-Force led to creative clashes in a new issue with Danny Fingeroth? I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Alright, so the character Juggernaut was graphically stabbed in the eye with a sword. Okay, maybe it's because I've been reading comic books for a while, but I'm just looking at that like, that's the line? That's the line, not Barbara Gordon being implied to having been raped by the Joker? Like, that's the line? I don't know. DeFalco supported the editing of the panel, calling it inappropriate, while McFarlane called this lunacy, arguing that such graphic visuals are commonplace in Marvel books. And then you get the Punisher, who's just romping around, casually blowing people's brains out, so it's like, okay, I do get when it comes to lighthearted entertainment that, yeah, for this particular series, this might be a little too much, but I guess in the grander scheme of things, it's like, wait, this is crossing the line? Like, how many people has the Punisher killed on screen? Well, not on screen, on panel, and we've seen it. We haven't seen, like, the brains and stuff, but we've seen it. So it's like, this isn't new. I mean, hell, when was Weapon X? Weapon X was in the mid-90s, I believe. Right? Let's see. Alright, come on. Yeah, that story arc. Yeah, that story arc was in 1991, and I would argue that some of the imagery and the storytelling in that storyline was, like, way over the line when it comes to Marvel entertainment. I mean, I know it's Wolverine, but it's still disturbing. It's not even the graphic violence, it's just the underlying implication of underground experimentation and basically using Wolverine as a puppet. It's the psychological aspect. So it's like, I get them not wanting to have that kind of stuff in a lighthearted entertainment sense, but it's, dude. Alright, fed up with editorial interference, he left the company under something of a cloud. According to Wallace, McFarlane's 15 issues of Spider-Man are now, perhaps slightly unfairly, held up alongside the likes of X-Force as the epitome of everything wrong in 90s comics, and their cash-in approach to the then-booming speculator market precipitating the near collapse of the industry. I mean, I don't think McFarlane was to blame on that. It was mostly the spectators who were to blame when it came to the 90s collapse, because they thought, oh, I had this comic book when I was a kid, and it sold for thousands. So therefore, we need to make more comic books introducing more characters and introducing more variants, and hopefully we will make it rich too. So that's not McFarlane's fault. That's the industry's fault. The industry listened to the spectators, which led to the collapse. And while yes, McFarlane was a superstar artist, I think it's kind of unfair to blame him, or even Rob Liefeld, whom I think more people blame for the 90s collapse. It's like, well, Rob Liefeld just wanted to make art. You can argue the quality of it, like Lord knows the man cannot draw feet, but I think it's unfair to lay the blame on these two men for the 90s collapse when it's just the industry listened to the wrong people, made stupid decisions, and kind of fucked themselves over in the long run. Alright, now we get to the big claim to fame. Image Comics. McFarlane then teamed up with 6 other popular artists to form Image Comics, an umbrella company under which each owned a publishing house. McFarlane's studio, Todd McFarlane Productions Inc., published his creation, the occult-themed Spawn, written and drawn by McFarlane. It was Image's second release, following the release of Rob Liefeld's Youngblood. Hey, here he is again. A month prior. Upon its release in 1992, Spawn number 1 sold 1.7 million copies. As of 2007, this remains a record for an independent comic book. Alright. Responding to harsh criticism of his abilities as a writer, McFarlane hired acclaimed writers to guest write issues 8 through 11. Oh, yeah. Here's where we get to the fun bit. Including Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Dave Sim, and Frank Miller. Subsequent writers he would hire on the series included Grant Morrison, Andrew Gossenberg, and Tom Zentowicki? Alright. Greg Capello penciled several issues as a guest artist and became the regular penciler with 26, with McFarlane remaining as writer and inker until number 70. The series continued to be a hit, and in 1993, Wizard declared Spawn the best-selling comic on a consistent basis that is currently being published. Spawn is notable for being one of only 2 Image books that debuted during the company's 1992 launch, along with Eric Larson's Savage Dragon, that continued to be published into the 2020s. Take a little sip of beer here, so if you guys want to comment, go ahead and do so. I have a very, very funny story about that former friend I mentioned earlier. So he told me that he started reading Spawn as a kid, and when I say kid, I mean prepubescent kid. But the funny thing was, his parents, and particularly his mother, was super religious, to the point where she did not want him to watch Labyrinth, the Jim Henson, David Bowie film, because it featured goblins, and goblins are demonic. However, that same woman was completely okay with her son reading Spawn, of all things. And that just blows my mind. It blew my mind when he told it, because, okay, I guess in her defense, you can maybe look at Spawn and say, okay, he's just like a slightly edgier superhero, and maybe Spawn is just like a random generator name that they came up with the hero. But it's like, dude, just flip through the pages and you'll understand, no, he is called Spawn because he is a demon spawn. He is risen up from hell, and he's trying to fight for his soul. So, but, yeah. Isn't this giving the Spawn run too much credit? This is in the 90s, when Marvel was nearly falling off and DC didn't have any great stories going either. I guess that is a very good point, too. Because this was when the bubble was about to burst. And Marvel was scrambling, DC was scrambling. So I guess it's like maybe people are looking back on Spawn more fondly because he was the most exciting thing going around at the time. I honestly don't know. Because I have heard that the issues written by McFarlane were not that great compared to when he had guest writers coming in. So that could be it. That really could be it. Alright. During Image's early years of operation, the company was subject to much industry criticism over aspects of its business practices, including late-shipped books. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? I can't think of that problem ever happening nowadays, right, guys? That kind of stuff never happens nowadays, right, guys? And its creator's emphasis on art over writing. Okay, before we continue, I am going to say this. Art is like physical beauty on a person. Good art is like someone being very beautiful, like Calvin Klein model. And it is the art that gets you your foot in the door and it makes like the good first impressions. However, the writing is the personality of the overall comic. Well, the art does give the personality too, but I'm just making the comparison. But if you only have good art, but shit writing, not many people are gonna want to stay and stick around. Like, think of All-Star Batman and Robin. I believe it was Jim Lee who was the artist on that one. Good art, but the writing was crap. And it got canceled early because the writing was crap. So that is a very fair claim because McFarlane's art is good. You can't deny his art is good, but it's like his writing... And Liefeld, you can argue about whether his art is good or not. I think it's very stylized, and his art can work for, like, action books. I don't think he would make a good, like, romance illustrator, or even a thriller or horror illustrator. His art is very action-oriented, and that is fine. But a lot of people look back on Youngblood, and it's like, oh my god, I actually spent money on that back in the day? I'm not trying to shit on anybody. I'm just saying, if you don't have good writing, people are only going to stick around for the art for so long. Now, the flip side, if you have crappy art, people are not going to give your comic book a chance. And it is only in a very rare case where a comic can have like some subpar art, or maybe just like crap art altogether, but people still come back and read it because they love it so much. Like, have you guys heard of Flock of Cows? Yeah, like these stupid little comics. Where, yeah, the art is pretty crappy. But the writing and the jokes are kind of funny. That's why people keep coming back to Flock of Cows, even though the art is pretty shitty. Excuse me, is this Google? No, this is Goggles. But no, stop! Welcome to Goggles! Wow, these are actually very nice. Excuse me, is this Google? It is stupid, but it's also very entertaining, okay? I love Flock of Cows just because it is stupid fun. Alright, so we're gonna continue reading for only a little bit longer. We're gonna make it to the toy line before we get into a video, because I am starting to get cotton mouth early. Alright. Okay, so we got Spawn. Worked with lots of people. Now it's plans for a Spawn Batman with artist Greg Capello. Oh yeah, there was a Spawn and Batman crossover, wasn't there? Do you have a go-to writer or artist? you see them and you have to at least pick up the books. I think for me, when it comes to writing, Garth Ennis is my go-to, because at the very least it's going to be entertaining, or it's going to be interesting. I've only read one Garth Ennis comic where it's like, this doesn't work out. His Thor miniseries, I wasn't completely sold on, because it was very obvious he didn't want to write a Thor comic. He wanted to write basically crossed, but with zombie Vikings flying in on their ships into New York City and causing absolute chaos, which is not a bad idea. And if he went with that, that was completely fine. But the whole time I was reading that series, I'm like, why is this a Thor series? Like, why is Thor even involved in it? Like, Thor barely does anything in it. Like, he gets his ass kicked in the first issue, then he's bamfed into some white room with Doctor Strange. They watch all the chaos. They watch all the stuff that his some people related to Thor do, or no, not related to Thor, related to the druid guy who caused the curse in the first place do. Anyways, not the best series, but at least it was entertaining. And as far as artists go, well, before Tim Sale unfortunately passed away, anything that had Tim Sale, even when he was just doing the cover, or even if he was doing the interior artwork, I had to pick up, because it was cool looking. Even his the Amazon series, it is kind of preachy in some bits, but I love the art. It was kind of cool to see him do nature art, because I'm so used to seeing him doing cityscapes. Yeah, I guess that, or Junji Ito, because say what you will about Junji Ito, at the very least you're going to find some interesting art with his stories. I'm going to light something on fire real quick. Yeah, though I will say, when I am closely waiting for Soul Finder Volume 5 to come out, because I do love that series. So I guess Douglas Ernst is another one that I check out at the very least, just because it has his name on it. Alright. So, let's get to McFarlane Entertainment. Published multiple Spawn spin-offs and miniseries. Okay, created a toy company, Todd's Toys, initially to merchandise collectible action figures of the Spawn character. 3 months, the company sold more than 2.2 million of the action figures nationwide. Oh, wow, that's actually pretty impressive. After Mattel sent a... What? Mattel? Why is Mattel involved? Alright, Mattel sent a cease and desist order based on a male doll in Mattel's Barbie line named Todd. Are you shitting me? Oh my god. They sent a cease and desist order based on a male doll in Mattel's Barbie line named Todd. McFarlane changed the company's name to McFarlane Toys. Oh my fucking god. Mattel is the pettiest fucking company on the planet. Oh my god. This isn't the first time Mattel has pulled some petty-ass bullshit on people. Like, okay, so you know the Aquason Barbie girl? I'm a Barbie girl. Like that cute little song that most people are annoyed by, but I unironically listen to when I'm on my morning jog. Anyways, they actually tried to take Aqua to court about that, but Aqua won that case due to free speech. So Aqua was able to keep Barbie girl, keep the rights to it, and blah, 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 blah. Well, fast forward to when the Barbie movie was coming out, and guess which song they sampled? not played in its entirety, but sampled because they hired Nicki Minaj to do like this rap song to it. They sampled Barbie Girl for the Nicki Minaj song for the end credits. They wouldn't even buy the rights to the full song to play. They just sampled it to get around the legal loopholes so they can play it in the end credits. It's like, oh my god, you're still salty about this 30-year-old case when all you had to do was just put on your bigger panties and stop being a bitch and just let the fuck go, because everyone loves the Barbie Girl song. And the fact that they pulled this bullshit on Todd, being like, oh, one of our Barbies' name is Todd, therefore you can't use that name. And it's like, how many fucking men in this country are named Todd with 2 D's? How petty can you get? Holy fuck, that is stupid. I'm sorry, I'm getting irrationally angry, but I have a lot of shit to say about Mattel, because Mattel is a very bullshit company in and of itself. Alright. The company's line of figures quickly expanded. Such as members of the band Kiss. Wait, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I think I might have seen those figurines in Hot Topic before they became a pop culture store. Remember when Hot Topic used to be like the goth store? I remember I wanted to go in there when I was a preteen because, you know, I wanted to be edgy and cool. So I went in there and I remember seeing one of those action figures where it was of the new Texas Chainsaw. So it's that scene where Leatherface is sawing a man in half from the groin first up. Alright, TV series such as X-Files and sports figures such as Terry Owens. And I pulled up to show you guys, ta-da, McFarlane's Toy Store. So we got DC, we got the NFL, ooh, Warhammer. Let's see what, oh yeah, they got some Warhammer figurines for you guys. Oh my god. Oh, that's for 4 figurines. Okay, never mind. I saw the $100 price tag. I was like, oh my god, that much for a toy? And it's like, okay, it's a bundle. So we got some Warhammer, and of course we gotta check out some Spawn. Alright. Got some nice Spawn figurines. Oh, sorry, they're sold out of the Deviant Rat City Spawn. Alright, but we got a statue, we got the clown. Another statue. So yeah, they got a decent selection here. They got the DC Multiverse. They even got sports figurines and sports stuff like that. Ooh, the Collectors Club. I'm not much of a statue person, unless it's a statue of a character that I like, because I do have a Riddler statue around here somewhere. Alright. Same year, McFarlane founded McFarlane Entertainment, film and animation studio. It produced the 1997 Spawn film and a new Spawn movie planned in 2008. Spawn was critically panned. Alright. Todd also produced the they also produced the animated Spawn, like that, the cult classic animated series. Alright. Studio produced a number of music videos. Oh, music videos too. Oh, a lot of stuff. So he's a multifaceted guy. Alright, so sports. We're not here for sports, we're here for comics. Video games. I don't know much about video games. And okay, the legal issues we'll get to later. But for now, we're going to watch a video interview. We do have a couple of speaking articles to cover, but right now I have Cottonmouth, so we're going to get to some interviews. I think this is a remember in that Bob Kane episode where there was a clip from the comic book greats with Bob Kane and Stan Lee, and I mentioned that it seemed very scripted and hokey. Well, apparently Todd McFarlane did an episode of Comic Book Greats way back then. So this is only part 1, and it's 15 and a half minutes long, so we're going to go ahead and watch this. I would be very interested to see how scripted this is compared to the Bob Kane episode. Because I feel like Todd McFarlane would probably not want to be as scripted as Bob Kane. Okay, for half a minute, I thought that said Excalibur production. But then I'm like, oh wait, Excelsior or Stanley's Cat Frage. Okay. This is very nostalgic to listen to.
Hi, heroes. I'm Stan Lee, and that's not your fault. You know, in a...
What? What does that even mean? What? Okay, someone in the chat, please try and explain what he was trying to say in that joke. I mean... yes, I am the great Stan Lee. Sucks to be you. That's what I'm getting from that joke, but that is such a weird way to put it. All right.
A lot of shows like this, people start by saying, and now my guest needs no introduction. Well, I'm not sure Todd McFarlane needs an introduction, but I think he certainly deserves one. So let's get into this. Not only is he multi-talented, but there are many facets about Todd that you're going to learn as we move along. For example, he's not only one of the top artist writers in our business, but he's also something of an entrepreneur. He's going into a new business where he's producing his own trading cards, which he'll tell you about later. He owns a comic book store, which is not a bad thing for a guy in the business to do. Mm-hmm. He's a baseball player. He's...
Oh, he actually plays baseball too? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did. Yep. Sorry, forgot. Ugh.
He used to play, and I think still does, with a Pac-10. I'm sure a lot of you know what that means. He explained to me it's 10 teams in the Pacific League. And on top of that, he's one of the most dazzling talents in the comic book business. And now, since I've given him that magnificent build-up, I'm sure that he'll be real nice to me and be an easy guest to interview. And without further ado, because I don't have much...
I think that is... Okay, is that me, or does it seem like Stan Lee is kind of like tugging at the leash a little bit? Like, don't you even think about challenging me, boy?
Much ado to spare. Here he is, the one and only Todd McFarlane.
Hey, Stan.
Hiya, Todd.
Hey, you sound just like my mom.
Listen, Todd.
Stan Lee said, "Stay, boy," and Todd's reaction was just to poop on the sidewalk next to him.
What I want to know is, before we get to the heavy...
Oh, Spawn. This was even after he left Marvel. Oh my gosh, was this? It doesn't say the date that this came out, but this was after he left Marvel, which I guess would explain why Stan Lee was trying to be like, I'm going to handle the introductions, and he's going to be a very nice guest. Isn't that right, Todd? And Todd's immediately like, you sound like my mom.
Stuff. You look about 12 years old. I know you're a little older than that. But what about your early years? What about before you started in comics? Because so many people have asked me, hearing I was going to do this video cassette, how did he get into it? What was he like as a kid? How did he learn to draw the way he does in such a short period of time?
Actually, I think that I'm probably different than most of the guys that I admired when I was growing up, in that I didn't start collecting my first comic book till I was 17, so I was probably grade 11 or 12. Most guys seem to, have read comic books since they were 5. I mean, we all had comic books as a kid. It wasn't like going to be an occupation of mine.
Same with me. My, if I can remember my first comic books, there were a couple of comic books that I permanently borrowed from my piano teacher when I was taking piano lessons. And I had a few other comics as a kid, but it wasn't really like something I super got into. Then I got into manga. But then once I got into college, it's like, all right, maybe I'll give comic books another chance. And, here I am.
So at about 17, for some reason, at that point I was collecting trading cards, baseball cards, living down in Southern California. And one day, all of a sudden, I walked into a corner store, plunked down my $2, and came home with 6 comic books. And
the days when you could just plunk down $2 and get 6 comic books. You can only hope to get that in the bargain bin.
Because I'm kind of a fanatical kid, within 2 weeks I was collecting every single comic book that was out on the stands. And it kind of gave me a focus to take my artwork. I'd always been doodling, and just like anybody else, and drawing since I was 5, I can remember, but I had no focus with it. And I think a lot of the kids out there, that's one of the problems that they have. They can't seem to put themselves in a direction. But once I started collecting the books, all of a sudden I said, well, you start to read so many that some of them aren't that good, and you go, I think I could do a little bit better than this, and you start to get a bit cocky and
Well, at least he admits to it.
You're on your way.
So I guess one of the first things you need is some taste. You have to be able to know this stuff is good, this isn't that good, and I'm going to be influenced by the good stuff.
I don't even think it's making that kind of judgment's pretty. I think you got to get cocky is what you got to do. I mean, because you got to think that you're better than a professional at that point. And if you don't, then there's no reason to do your samples. What I try to tell the kids is really, when you're going to do the samples, don't really look at the good guys all that much, because they break your heart, because they do things that mind boggle you. You know what I mean?
There is, you still need to be humble to a certain respect, but there is also something to the approach of, oh, I can do that. And, for me personally, this is going to be a super bitchy thing to admit, and I am willing to admit that I sound like a total bitch when I say this. So one of the other things that I write outside of my one comic book is free verse poetry, and what really got me back into writing was free verse poetry, and the thing that kicked that off was the poetry book Milk and Honey. You guys have probably seen this in Target before. So, this book, Milk and Honey, it's a lot of people described it as a sex poetry book. It's not so much. There are a few sex poems, but it's mostly just female whinging the poetry book. It's female whinging the poetry book. And I remember reading through it all, cover to cover, closing it, and being like, this is what poetry has become. I know I can do this. I know I can do better than this. And that's what lit a fire back under me to start writing again, in general. Because for a couple of years when I was in college, I had to stop writing to focus on my studies. And I got very depressed. And the fire got lit back right under me. I understand that sounds bitchy. I understand that does sound very uppity of myself, but that it is what it is. I got inspired to write because of root beer car and milk and honey. Fight me.
So take the guys and try and redraw the stuff from the guys whose stuff you don't admire a lot of, because then it looks like, yeah, I'm better than that guy, I'm better than that guy, because if I'm redrawing Jack Kirby or Neil Adams or John Byrne stuff, I can't do that stuff, and I'm just going to get disappointed.
So then actually what you're saying is the opposite of what I said, that you're better off looking at the guys who aren't that good, because that'll give you more confidence. You know you can do better than they can.
Right, exactly.
Of course, in your case, though, what about when you first started? Certainly when you were 17 or 15 or 14 or 11, you weren't better than these cartoonists then, but you must have known at some point you'd be able to be as good or better.
I think what ended up happening, I mean, the way that I taught myself, and I know I drive some of the older guys a little bit crazy, but they say draw from life and go and look at the world and stuff. I tell the kids the opposite, draw from comic books. And the reason is because the things that make comic books cool, in my opinion, are things like big laser guns, those monsters that are drooling and got big fangs on them, guys that got capes that are 47 feet, like you can't see that in life. So, but those are the kind of things that visually make things entertaining to look at. So I always tell the kids, look at the comic book, but what I would do is I would just take like arms, and I draw arms for like a week till I kind of had it figured out what an arm looked like. Then the next week I'd try to teach myself how to draw kneecaps. And I just, after about 2.5 months of placing all the pieces together, I kind of had a body. And then after that point, I had to like actually start to turn the body and try to do storytelling and go to the next level. So it was kind of a slow process for me.
Well, when you were drawing the arms and the bodies and so forth, where did you get them from? Did you take them from your own arm, or did you look at other drawings of arms, for example?
I mean, there's certain lines that are on comic books that you got to kind of place. I didn't really study muscle magazines, which a lot of guys do.
I think a lot of, especially older comic book illustrators would say that they, for anatomy, they studied the muscle magazines. So I guess it is true what they say. The muscle magazines are not for the women. They are for men. As silly as it sounds.
And the reason is because I think that some of the guys that draw perfect can't really put the superheroes into certain poses that make them look dynamic. I mean, Jack Kirby, if he had put all the, kneecaps in the right place, couldn't have done those great poses.
That is a very good point because, sorry, just the chat. Incredible mind on art. I agree with both philosophies, but I do prefer the more fantastical depictions of heroes. Yeah, and I think he was about to get into that with Jack Kirby, but there is something to realism, like make it look as real as possible, but when you want something more action-packed, you kind of have to ignore realism a little bit. That's why with especially action movies, even in the 80s action movies where they didn't have as many like CGI and green screen effects, they still were being fantastical about it and ignoring like the laws of physics and whatnot. And as he's about to get into with Jack Kirby, while he was trying to keep like within the realistic proportions, he did have to kind of ignore certain like anatomical poses and anatomical bits to get the dramatic poses he wanted to with like Captain America or even with the Fantastic Four, ignoring Mr. Fantastic because he's a rubber man. But yeah, when it comes to comic book drawing and dynamicism, you kind of have to ignore that realism in order to make it look cool. Like I said earlier, McFarlane's his motto is the rule of cool. So yeah, this makes sense with his philosophy.
You needed to be able to warp the bodies around, but from my perspective, no, I watched, the one thing that I watched was teachers' hands. When I went to college, people used to talk and go like this, and the one word advice.
Oh my god, he's just like Ditko, he's obsessed with hands!
They said if you can draw great expressions of faces and great hands, the rest of the body doesn't really need to be there because you can do a dramatic shot by going a guy gritting his teeth and going like this, that gives a lot of emotion. So I watch people's hands a lot, and that was about the only thing I was conscious about.
That's interesting, because I always used to feel the hands and the faces were absolutely the most important two elements to get excitement and interest and drama in a panel. And we used to say to the artists years ago that you've got to make your characters look excited, because if they don't look excited at what's happening in the story, how can you convince the reader that it is an exciting incident if the characters participating look calm? So we always try to make the hands tense and the faces wide-eyed and the mouths open, and sometimes you can get two artists.
I can't tell if McFarlane is thinking to himself, are you bullshitting me right now? Or if he's just like, oh my god, I'm here with Stan Lee, oh my god, I'm here with Stan Lee, oh my god, I'm here with Stan Lee. I can't tell what expression that is on his face. But then again, I am undiagnosed autistic, so you guys tell me.
Drawing a strip, and this is something you're so great at. Every panel you do looks exciting, but you can take the same story and let one artist, for instance, if somebody is supposed to be frightened, a monster is coming into a room, and you could have the person like this, oh, there's a monster. Or you could draw her or him like this, ah, a monster. Well, which one would you want to read, if you saw those two drawings? And usually you get that excitement with the hands and with the faces. Mm-hmm. But I think the body is kind of important too. You've got to know what to do with the shoulders.
Yeah, well, the thing is, most superhero guys don't stand like we stand. In fact, they wouldn't sit at the table.
Bite your tongue.
No, wait, they wouldn't sit in the chair like this. They'd sit like this. Of course, they got the big bulging chest, and they'd, so everything is melodramatic. That's why I try to teach the kids that show me their portfolios too, is overdo everything. I mean, like, keep knocking people over the head with the visuals, because, it is fiction, and people want to see something that's not real, I don't think, because otherwise they can read a novel or something like that. So you got to make it, and the scenes that are what we call pedestrian scenes, where John and Joe are talking out of costume. Those ones, I always tell the kids, you can still make those look exciting the same way that Alfred Hitchcock used to make them look exciting. Instead of doing the shot straight at my face, you can come up through the glass table, you can do a silhouette of them, you can shoot through the window that maybe's got the pane that's in checkerboards or something like that. You can do a dramatic down shot. If Aunt May's pouring coffee, that's a pretty bland, stupid panel, but I could make that, I think, somewhat more visual to look at by either doing a close-up of her eye as the smoke or the steam's coming billowing out of the cup of coffee. I could show her reflection in a stainless steel canister that she's pouring. There's a lot of different ways, and I try to get the kids to think of the pedestrian panels a lot more, because then the action comes easy. If you can make somebody pouring coffee look good, then a guy getting blasted through a wall with a laser gun is a piece of cake, I guess.
This right here was what I was hoping to get to with when I started doing artists on this stream. Because it's one thing to read an artist's life story, and it's one thing to get them to interview of what was the creative process, what was blah, 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 blah. But it's another thing to hear an artist of how they approach art. That's what I really wanted to get to in this series. How does an artist approach art? And I love how McFarlane is actually going through how he approaches drawing a scene, how he approaches making art in general. Because for me, this is the fascinating shit. Because it seems like he's not just taking hints from comic books, and he's not just taking hints from like watching his professors talk with the hands, but he's also thinking of like with movies of Alfred Hitchcock, and like this is what I was dying to hear. And something else that I've been noticing throughout this interview, if you guys remember from my Bob Kane episode, when it was just Stanley and Bob Kane talking, it was very hokey and very plastic. Like, it was ultra controlled to an OCD degree, where it's like I couldn't really get if this is actually him. But here, this feels real. Like, this feels like an actual interview happening between Stan Lee and Todd McFarlane. And it's such a night and day difference. I'll post both links of these videos on Twitter so you guys can see what I'm talking about, but this is so bizarre to watch, considering the last time I saw Stan Lee in video, he was just gassing up Bob Kane, but him actually interviewing an artist is incredible.
Todd, you're a real comic book natural, because what you say, I think, is so important, especially if anyone watching this has aspirations of being a comic book artist or even a writer. You know, you've only got so many panels to tell the story, and if you have one dull panel on a page, you're really wasting about 1/6 of the page, and you're so right on, because anything can be made interesting. Somebody walking down the street, you say, what can you do with someone walking down the street? But as you mentioned, if you make it an angle shot looking up at them, maybe through some steam that's coming up from a grating or from a window. Gene Colan once did a panel, I'll never forget, of a fellow opening a door. He had opened the door, and all Gene drew was the hand holding the doorknob, but he did it in a certain perspective and with his light and shading. I mean, it was as interesting a panel as you can get. So it just depends on your point of view, and I suddenly realized this is not Stan Lee giving a lecture, so let's get right back to you. Let me ask you something else.
Okay.
How do you
Oh. Very real, to the point that McFarlane almost feels like he's challenging nearly every point on art that Stan Lee has made. Yeah, I mean, this is after he's left Marvel, so he's probably a little bit more willing to challenge Stan Lee at this point. But, and I get the feeling that Stan Lee is a little bit frustrated with him, but at the same time, this feels like an extremely authentic interview. I don't know. You guys let me know. Do you want me to continue? Because this is only part 1 of the series. We need to get into the deposition between Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane. We're going to get into that. But this is only part 1. Is part 2 here? Yeah, part 2 is here. So you guys let me know if you want to go into part 2, because this is actually a very fascinating interview. This is decades old, but it is a fascinating interview, and but that does mean that we can't do the other interviews, including the interview that apparently Spawn 2025 is going to be happening. So we got these 2 interviews to go to. So within the next 4 minutes, you guys let me know if you want me to continue this or move on to something else. Everything is going to be linked below.
How do you manage to mix your personal life and your professional life? I mean, you've just, I should have mentioned in your introduction, despite and besides all the other things you are, you're also quite a happily married man who is now a new father.
Yep.
And I think we're very lucky in that your wife, Wanda, and your daughter, Cyan, are here with us tonight, and I have a feeling the people watching this would probably like to meet them. Do you think you could talk them into coming up here?
We can do it. If not, then I know Grandma wants to see him too. So.
Aww.
Here are Todd's lovely wife, Wanda, and his lovely daughter, Cyan. As if by magic, they've appeared. Hi, glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Oh my
Now,
goodness,
let's see,
she's
Cyan.
such a happy little potato. Oh, what a cute little potato. She's got her father's hair. Oh, though it is frizzy like her mom's perm.
And first of all, you've been absolutely wonderful about this. You've stayed there and you haven't cried and you stayed awake, and I know you'd rather take a nap. And I'm not going to keep talking because I know Todd wants to talk a lot about his wife and daughter. Go to it, buddy.
I think that one of the things that some of the people trying to break into comic books have to understand, you got to have a pretty understanding wife, I think. You know, and I hope other guys think that they also have the best wife, but I think I've got the best. She's stood by me.
Yeah, all those other wives are fine and well, but my wife is the best wife. Todd McFarlane, the wife guy.
For a lot of years, you're asking me about my work schedule. I've been able to, because of my success, been able to back away from it, but for a lot of years I had to put in those. And
those long hours.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, there's 7 days a week, 80-hour weeks, week in, week out, and literally just come upstairs, get dinner, come downstairs, keep working. I mean, deadline. We've all had deadline problems, but it makes it a little bit easier when you have somebody there that is understanding about what you're doing. That's also encouraging along the way, and knows that hopefully it's not going to be forever, but that it's a means to an end and whatever. So I think that not enough people actually introduce their wives or their girlfriends or family members that if it wasn't, I think, for my wife being there and helping me through a lot of tough times, I probably wouldn't be standing up here today talking to you.
I
because
know
she kept me
exactly what
going.
you mean.
So.
Yeah.
I think
There is something to having a supportive partner. Chris' last name, my wife is the best wife. Well, I'm sorry, Chris, but Todd McFarlane would like to disagree with you. His wife is the best wife, clearly. But I am unmarried at this point, but I do have a boyfriend. But my boyfriend is very supportive of me writing. He's very supportive of me producing comic books, and there is something to having someone there who, even if you have like a bad sales day, you come home, you're depressed, and they're just being like, hey, what's up, babe? And you could just hug them and everything will be all right. Or they'll be like, hey, dinner's on me tonight. Or, hey, I've got things covered tonight. There is something to having someone there to be your shoulder to lean on, or at least be the person who's going to help you with your dream. Because making comics is hard enough, but it's even harder when you don't have that support there. So I'm very happy that McFarlane has. You guys are super cute, by the way. Oh, thank you. Are you talking about me and my boyfriend, or McFarlane and his wife? But yeah, the support, even if it's just a peck on the cheek, it goes a long way in the creative process.
Depends on your. I think it depends on your approach to how you're going to break in the business. You were very driven, and so you were at it very hard for a very concentrated period of time, but not necessarily the only way you can do it. But it certainly worked out for us.
Like I said from the beginning, when I started collecting every comic book, I'm psychotic. When I put my nose down, I become obsessive with things.
Well, Wanda, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be married to a guy who is that obsessive about something? And I might add, that's successful at it. I mean, it's a whole new career. You're in showbiz.
It is, yeah, and it's funny because where we live, people don't pay much attention.
Vancouver, right?
Right, Vancouver Island. People don't really pay much attention. There's the odd kid that's a collector, and they're very excited when they meet him, but it's such a different world when you go to a convention or something like this, but particularly a convention where there's hundreds of kids lined up, sometimes thousands, to see him, and I just look around and go, wow, this is very strange.
It's a good feeling, though.
It is a great feeling to see the people
How does
appreciate it.
Cyan react to all of this?
Well, this is brand new for her. She's just 6 weeks old today, actually.
I think
and
that's
so
Oh my god. That would explain why she's so tiny. I was thinking that when I'm watching her, and like, oh my gosh, she's so small, but oh my gosh, 6 weeks. That has to be a record to how old someone is to meeting Stan Lee. Imagine introducing your 6-week-old baby to Stan Lee. That trippy. That very trippy.
Great.
But see, I'm already working on her because she could possibly be like, kids want to know whether there's going to be a Spidey baby. See, and this is why I bought this here, because then at any moment when she senses danger, see, then she could just come in here and Spidey baby is ready to go, and we're off. And
I wondered why you had her sticking to the wall when I first met her. That's terrific.
Well, I think we're getting hungry, so I think we'll leave you guys to the rest of your interview, but thank you for inviting me.
Hey, thanks
It's been
so
fun.
much for coming and
Okay.
kind of rounding this thing out. And it was great seeing you,
Okay,
Wanda. And
bye-bye.
Cyan, remember now, when we need a spider baby, who knows? Boy, when you realize that most artists need motivation, I'd say, Todd, that you have two of the greatest motivating factors I've ever seen there. You've got a lovely family.
Thank
and
you,
I
thank you.
congratulate you. Now, you mentioned Vancouver. You live in Vancouver, or more accurately, Vancouver Island,
Right,
as
right.
you've told me a moment ago.
Yep.
And I was just wondering, what's it like? That's pretty far from New York, where most of the comic publishers are.
Yep.
What's it like to be working so far away? Is it more difficult or easier because nobody's bothering you, or what?
For me, I mean, I've always worked at a small town ever since I broke in. So for me, it's not really a change. I mean, I grew up in a few big cities, but...
Oh, crap. It cut out. Oh well, so we got part 2 and part 3, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through all of that. When was Mayhem Parker created? Let's Google that real quick. Oh, so April Parker? Alright. Okay, April Parker, Earth 982. Alright, current alias, Mayhem. Okay. Creators, Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends. Alright, so it looks like 2008 was when Mayhem was created. Okay, so oh, my goodness, we have been going on a very long time. Oh my gosh, I've seen this video, Superstar Artist Who Lost Everything, and it's like they're trying to portray Todd McFarlane as like a failure, and it's like, clearly he hasn't failed. Clearly he actually made it. Oh, Mayday? Oh, Mayday Parker. Okay. All right. So just May Parker or Mayday. Oh yeah, this is the Spider-Girl I think I grew up with. Because I remember having a Spider-Girl graphic novel, and I adored it, and I reread it when I grew older, and I did not remember Vampire Daredevil. That was interesting. Alright, Mayday Parker. Okay, so she was created back in 1997. As a what if, but if we're talking about the Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Girl comic, it's probably earlier than that. Let's see. So, technically back then, but let's see. You know what? It's probably going to be on Amazon. There we go. Alright, so probably her. Looks like this collector's edition was done way back when. So Tom DeFalco. The author. Not saying much on here. Oh, we can save $4.75. Peter Parker's baby is Mayday Parker. She was created in 1997, from what I could find. McFarlane's baby is probably the inspiration for the daughter. Aw, and just a few years after this interview? Maybe, but the thing is, apparently Mayday was created by DeFalco. So maybe this interview inspired Stan Lee, and Stan Lee decided to crack the whip to get a Spider-Girl because it looked so dang cute. And Hey, Stan Lee, you gonna say no to Stan Lee? So I like that idea where Stan Lee just adored Todd McFarlane's daughter so much that he's like, you know what? We need a Spider-Girl. I get the feeling that Stan Lee was actually J. Jonah Jameson way back when, because dude maybe not have been the nicest guy around, but he does know how to make an interesting article. But yeah, I remember this girl. This was my Spider-Girl when I was growing up. I need to reread that comic because I did really love this comic as a kid. Alright, but now we need to get into a less fun part about McFarlane's career, and that is the deposition between Neil Gaiman about the creation of certain comic book characters. Now, I'm getting this disposition from these court documents from here, law.justa.com, but you can very easily find these documents just about anywhere. And yeah, so here's so we're going to take from Quimby. Here is a generalized account.
Two big names in the comic world combined their efforts to develop two new characters for the Spawn series of comic books. But did they co-own the copyrights for those characters? In 2004's Gaiman vs. McFarlane, the Seventh Circuit had to decide. For comic buffs, Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane are both celebrated names. Gaiman as a scriptwriter and McFarlane as a scriptwriter, illustrator, and publisher. In 1992, McFarlane started publishing the Spawn series of comic books, which he personally wrote and illustrated. The protagonist in the series was a man named Al Simmons, who died and then reappeared on Earth as a Hellspawn, an officer in Hell's army. In response to criticism for bad writing, McFarlane invited Gaiman to write Spawn's 9th issue. Gaiman accepted, ultimately introducing new characters, including medieval Spawn and Count Nicholas Cagliostro. Gaiman sued McFarlane under the Copyright Act in federal district court, arguing that he and McFarlane co-owned the copyrights for the medieval Spawn and Cagliostro characters. The district court entered judgment for Gaiman, and McFarlane appealed to the Seventh Circuit, arguing that the characters weren't copyrightable. McFarlane reasoned that Gaiman had contributed nothing more than ideas, and also cited the Sins Affair.
Okay. As much as I don't like Neil Gaiman nowadays, the fact that Neil Gaiman wrote that script and he came up with those characters, or even just those specific versions of those characters, he does deserve credit for that and co-authorship and co-creation of those specific characters. And I think another one is not mentioned in this one, but Angela? Yeah. So it's like, look, as much as I don't like Neil Gaiman right now, he does deserve the credit for those characters, and he should be listed as a co-creator for them.
Doctrine. That doctrine provides that some things are just too commonplace and naturally related to the treatment of a subject to be copyrightable. Stock characters are prime examples.
There was another one on YouTube. It was a segment from You Think You Know. Alright, yeah. Oh my god. Go away.
You might think you know Neil Gaiman, but here are 12 facts you may not have known about the comics master of dark fantasy. Neil Richard Gaiman was born November 10th, 1960. Poison Ivy and the Riddler, the Books of Magic, some Spawn stories that would cause a lawsuit that you should watch our Spawn video to learn about, Marvel's 1602, Eternals, various graphic novels, and 2 miniseries starring Death, sister of Dream from Sandman. Even though comics are the most important art form, for some reason, Gaiman has also written popular prose novels such as American...
Okay, so...
Gods, Anansi Boys, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and Good Omens, co-written with Terry Pratchett. Children's fantasy novels such as Coraline and The Graveyard Book, and children's books such as The Day I Swapped My Dad for 2 Goldfish.
Okay, let's, I think they have a Spawn episode down here. Okay, let's just create a new tag. All right, here we go.
You might think you know Spawn, but here are 12 facts you may not know about Todd McFarlane's Hell Person in a Cape. Spawn first appeared in appropriately Spawn number 1, written and drawn by Todd McFarlane and published by Image Comics in 1992.
Yeah, look at that pose. Like, that is such a dynamic pose there.
Spawn was the second series to launch from Image Comics, following Rob Liefeld's Youngblood. McFarlane first created Spawn when he was 16 years old with the help of his father. The original version was more of a sci-fi oriented comic, and so his costume was colored with the cool blues of space. When McFarlane decided to make him come from hell, the cool blues were changed to warm reds. McFarlane named many of the major characters in Spawn after important people in his life. Spawn's alter ego, Al Simmons, was named after McFarlane's former roommate. Simmons' wife's daughter, Cyan, was named after McFarlane's own daughter, and his wife—
That's why I remember when he said his daughter's name was Cyan, for some reason it tickled that part in my brain where it's like, Cyan, Cyan, Cyan. Where have I heard Cyan? Oh, that's so cute. He named the little girl after his daughter.
wife Wanda named after McFarlane's wife. Simmons' friend Terry Fitzgerald was named after a longtime friend and employee of McFarlane. After writing and drawing the first 7 issues of Spawn himself, McFarlane had a number of famous guest writers come—
That is so 90s. The big gun, the thing of bullets running down over his shoulder, the fire, the big ass muscles. That is so 90s.
in on some early issues, including Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller, and Grant Morrison. Dave Sim wrote a crossover with his character, Cerebus the Aardvark, in which the two characters visit a prison that all corporate comic book characters are trapped in. The publication order of some early issues of Spawn is all out of whack. Issues 19 and 20 were originally skipped, but later 19 came out between 24 and 25, and 20 came out between 25 and 26. No one knows exactly why, but the theory is that it was a way to work around the comic distributors' policies on late issues. McFarlane's tendency to name characters after real people came back to bite him when he was sued in 2004 by hockey player Tony Twist for profiting from his name and likeness with mobster character Antonio Tony Twist Twistelli. Twist won in a
I guess that's fair.
$15 million verdict. Speaking of McFarlane lawsuits, Neil Gaiman filed suit against McFarlane in 2002 over ownership of characters he had introduced in Spawn number 9, including Angela, Cogliostro, and Medieval Spawn. Gaiman was awarded ownership of Angela, whom he then sold to Marvel Comics, who made her Thor's sister and a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
So he won the rights just so she could sell her off to Marvel. So she can be a shill. Interesting.
I guess we might as well do the lawsuit trifecta. In 1995, McFarlane purchased the copyrights of bankrupt publisher Eclipse Comics, believing this gave him the rights to the classic character Miracle Man. He subsequently introduced a character named Man of Miracles to Spawn. Long story short, the court disagreed that McFarlane owned Miracle Man, and Man of Miracles was retconned out. One Eclipse character that was successfully integrated into Spawn was the Heap, a swamp monster introduced by Hillman periodicals in 1942, and revived by Eclipse in 1986. The new version introduced in Spawn was a homeless person who is murdered next to a bag of ghost slime, and then turns into a giant trash monster. Spawn's massive popularity led to a number of spin-offs, including an Angela miniseries written by Neil Gaiman, Blood Feud and Violator written by Alan Moore, Medieval Spawn / Witchblade written by Garth Ennis, a Batman crossover written by Frank Miller, and Hellspawn and Sam and Twitch, which features some of the earliest work for hire by Brian Michael Bendis. With over 250 consecutive issues, Spawn is the longest-running title at Image, with the only other still-running launch title from 1992 being Eric Larsen's Savage Dragon, which also has over 200 issues. 1997's Spawn feature film could have gone very differently. The original choice for director was Tim Burton, and Crow director Alex Proyas was...
Oh my god, that would have been fantastic. Spawn done by Tim Burton. It would have been weird, but honestly, it probably would have been fun. I mean, we've seen Tim Burton do superheroes before, and people initially were, when it came to Batman Returns, it's like, this is a little too weird and gothic. I don't know if we want this. When it comes to Spawn, Tim Burton could have gone all out with Spawn in there. So that would have been one hell of a movie if they did Spawn with Tim Burton.
Signed on to direct before leaving to make Dark City instead. Actors other than Michael Jai White considered for the role of Al Simmons included Wesley Snipes, Cuba Gooding Jr., and also apparently Snoop Dogg. That sounds made up, but it is actually true. That's it for this episode of You Think You Know Comics.
So yeah, the lawsuit is that Gaiman wanted the copyrights to specific characters like Angela, the other guy, and Medieval Spawn, and he was awarded 50% like co-creation for those characters, and Neil Gaiman sold his percentage to Marvel, which honestly makes me think that he just wanted to have the copyright so he can sell it off to something else, which, you know what? As a co-creator, he has the right to do that. I am going to say that now. As the co-creator, he has the right to do that. I still think it's kind of scummy of him, but he has that right. So, you can find the full disposition here. I'm not going to go through all this because I don't know lawyer speak. My father is a lawyer, but I don't know how to read legal documents, so I am not going to embarrass myself by attempting to understand all of this. But, anyways, let's see. We have these interviews, so yes, there is going to be a... when was this interview done? 4 years ago. One thing I do want to see before I want to see the comments section. I want to see no comments on the briefing. Let's see about this guy. Eight years ago. Oh, young Neil Gaiman is basically Kylo Ren. Ooh. There's nothing here. Here. Let's go. So, nothing here either. But you just know that once the news about Neil Gaiman came out, McFarlane had a good long laugh at his expense. You just know he had a good long laugh at his expense. Alright, so I saw some good things about this one, so let's see about, I can't tell if this was a DVD feature or if this, I think this is one of the features for the Spawn 1997 film. So Spawn, an interview with Todd McFarlane, so we'll see. Come on. Come on. Oh, you are playing. Okay.
I would say that once you see what we've presented here in the Spawn movie, that because it isn't a true literal translation of the comic book, that there is the chance that it could actually create, a division within the audience. I could say the same thing about the animation, which is a hard R. And so again, it's as far away. I've had people come up to me and go, "Oh, after seeing the animation, I won't even touch a PG-13 movie." And so you've already started to create a division. Again, the only thing I can do is that because you do have different audiences, what you have to do again is not only play to the strengths of the different mediums you're in, but you have to play to the strength of the audience. You have to know who your audience is. And so, given that we all wanted to make a PG-13 movie, we knew who was going to go to a PG-13 movie. It was going to be this certain audience, and we had to then make something that would be palatable to that audience. If they had said to me, "Todd, there's going to be nobody under the age of 35 seeing the Spawn movie," you've got a completely different movie that you're now watching. Or if they said, "Todd, we're going to try and target this to the ages of 5 to 9, you're going to see another completely different movie." So what we wanted to do was to say, within the parameters, within the box of PG-13, how far can we push it in terms of some of the ideas? And like I said, just the theme itself, let's go back to the original pitch. Although I'm just trying to make a point because, again, Spawn was a #1 property and Hollywood came to me. But
I think when it comes to ratings, when it comes to Spawn with the subject matter and the violence, it should be an R. Now, I understand that making Spawn an R-rated movie would mean that you're not going to sell as many tickets. You're not going to get as many butts into seats because what adults are going to come and sit in on an R-rated superhero movie? Me. And it's like, yeah, I guess Spawn would appeal more towards teenagers because, teenagers being little shits and little rebels, so they're going to want to watch something like Spawn. However, you have the movie rating system to compete with. So there's that aspect of, okay, do we just go ahead, full speed ahead to an R rating, or do we try and cut back as much as we can to make it a PG-13 rating? Because if I remember the Nostalgia Critic review, one of the biggest complaints was you had all this violence and stuff going on, but it was clear they were cutting corners, like censorship-wise, to try and make it as PG-13 as possible. Even though, in my opinion, something like Spawn should be R.
What am I supposed to do? I'm going into a room, you got a bunch of stuffy shirts.
Hold on, let me check something real quick. Yeah, they made Spawn into a PG-13 movie, which something like Spawn should not be PG-13, both in its subject matter and the fact that Spawn gets very fucking violent. Like, obviously, Spawn does not curse as much as I do on this stream, but it's the subject matter of it's dealing with police corruption, there's child rapists, there's all sorts of violence. So something like Spawn should not be PG-13, it should be R. And I think that's what the big thing that kneecapped the movie. And especially that you're dealing with the fact that the main character was killed and remade into a hell spawn and a soldier of Satan's army. Like, how is that not rife material for an R-rated movie?
And you sit there and you go, okay, you guys are the movie makers, and I've got a great movie idea. Now get this, folks. Get this. It's a guy from the pit of hell that deals with Satan, and we want to make it palatable, PG-13, so we can send it to the masses. Are you in or are you out? And ultimately, just on that sales pitch, I don't last very long. So what ended up getting us past that was that already the...
I guess I understand the logic there. It's like, alright, movie deal, but you gotta make it PG-13. Okay, I get it, but I do not agree with it.
Those ideas were already in place, and I had shown them that on a couple different levels that it was a #1 property. early on, I kind of set 4 pillars. I'm like, where's the public? And I set down toys. I set down electronics, which is video games and things of that sort, movies, and television. And so I felt that if I could get into all 4 of those places, that I would have 4 pillars or foundations that I could then potentially build a big house on, and it would be fairly stable. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to get into movies wasn't because I wanted to be a Hollywood guy and I want to be a producer and I want to be a star and I want to mix it up with Tom Cruise. It was just that since that's where the public goes, then I needed to get it out on the 60-foot t-shirt, for lack of a better term, that actually moves. The only consistency that I ever want.
I think that's a term I'm unfamiliar with. I think he's trying to hype himself up here, to be honest. Because I think he's not entirely happy with them having to reel it back to PG-13.
On it was the attitude of it, that the Spawn comic book has some balls and has an edginess to it, and it's kind of dark, and I just wanted to make sure that all those things translated. I didn't really want a literal translation, because given that I'm involved in all these things and I have control over all of them, the easiest way to bore yourself is to keep telling the same joke over and over and over and over and over. Spawn to me is something that's in comic book format to start with, and now in movies, but it's kind of, I call it Batman if he wasn't controlled by corporate America. What in my mind he should be over 50 years. He should have moved from the spot that he was created in 1939, and he hasn't really done it. And so I found
there I am going to disagree with him on, because when Batman was first introduced, he was still wielding a gun. He was perfectly okay with using potentially fatal, violence. And he was a very different character from what we know now. So Batman has changed a lot. So I will disagree with McFarlane there. And I'm guessing this interview, because it's for the film, he's trying to gas up Spawn particularly well, even though he should know better the comic book history. So.
Found it kind of strange early in development of Spawn that I was the guy that actually wanted to make more changes than other people, because I think they thought that they would be offending me if they wanted to make it, go, no, Todd, that's not going to work. And I was the one that was saying, we don't need to see the cape. If I never see the cape in the whole movie, that would be okay with me, because if he has a 40-foot cape for an hour and a half, I'm telling you, first thing that's going to happen, he's going to trip about 10 times, and I don't think that looks very...
When the fuck are you concerned with realism, my dude? Okay, yeah, this interview is all about him gassing up the film. Man, I hate to end on such a sorry note there. But, alright, so I do have how about instead of articles we went through, I'm going to link articles that I was planning to go through, especially when it comes to the new Spawn film that they're coming out with, and I hope that they are going to go with R rating, because something like Spawn should not be PG-13, because Spawn was never meant to be for the kiddies. Spawn was meant to be for early to young adults. The edgelords. Spawn was not meant for the kiddies. So, I'll link those in the video later. And I guess I'll link the link to McFarlane Toys store in case any of you are... This feels very much like 80s coked up Stephen King. It kind of does. It's so weird. Oh, something tells me McFarlane finds most things to be tame if they aren't insanely over the top. Yeah, he probably does. And I think in that interview in particular, he sounds like coked up Stephen King, which is very strange because in the interview with Stan Lee, he sounds a hell of a lot more authentic, even though with the Bob Kane episode, it's established that there is some scripting involved. However, he's more authentic here in this one. But here, he sounds like coked up Stephen King, which is very strange. But, I don't know. And Todd McFarlane strikes me as the kind of guy where if he wants to be wholesome, he can be pretty fucking wholesome. I've made this comment on Twitter before when it came to like Garth Ennis and Mark Millar. They're known for their edgy comment or oh hey Martin.
Very heroic if this guy's running
shut
around.
up. Oh hey Martin is sending me page 6 for issue 3. Yay! But anyways, with those two guys, they are known for their edgelord content, but when they want to be wholesome, they can be pretty fucking wholesome. It is almost shockingly surprising how wholesome they can be. I feel like Todd McFarlane can be wholesome if he wanted to be. Like, I feel like he could make a pretty dang cute kids comic book if he wanted to. It's just, he has to want to make that comic book. Because I feel like it's the people who force themselves to make wholesome content are the ones who make the most half-assed shit ever. But it's the people who want to make wholesome content. It is the most heartwarming and wholesome thing you can ever imagine. And I feel like Todd McFarlane, if he wanted to make wholesome content, he could if he wanted to. But we are going to leave it at that. I wanted to do this interview and cover these 2 articles. I'll link them down below just in case. But we are almost at our 2-hour limit, and I desperately need to pee. So thank you for joining me. Leave a comment, share if you want to, and I'll see you guys in the next stream. Bye!